Okay, well, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate you being here with us. Westside Community Healthcare District's been working with CivicMic. My name is Danielle Wood, and I represent CivicMic. And the district's been working with us to educate the community and engage community members about the current income shortfall for the district. Our primary goal with tonight's meeting and our engagement activities is to understand the community's priorities and represent those priorities through the actions of the district. So this meeting is being recorded. If you would like to see it later or share with your neighbors, it will be available on civicmic.com/Westside CHD in the next couple of days. If you haven't visited our website already, I will go over that a little bit at the end of the meeting and show you what's available out there and let you know different ways to get engaged. But before we start the meeting, I have a few ground rules that I'd like to cover to make sure that we respect everyone's time and personal viewpoints. So we plan to keep this meeting to right around an hour. We will hold all questions until the end of the presentations. So if you have questions, please write them down so you don't forget. And at the end of the presentation, I'll go over how we'll be asking questions and answering those. To finish the meeting in a timely manner, we may need to answer some questions individually or after the meeting concludes, but we will be providing our contact information so we can do that. We want to make sure that everyone can hear the presentation. So to help with the background noise, we will ask all participants to remain on mute for the entire presentations. And when we get to the questions, I'll make sure everyone knows how to remove themselves from mute to ask questions. So this public engagement process really aims to gather feedback from different demographics within the community with different values. And we'd like to hear from as many participants as possible. We will make every attempt to shield you from personal attacks or slander. Anyone that's using foul language or making personal attacks will be moved to a private meeting room by the moderator, and then we will allow you to come back once you've regained your composure. But if that behavior continues, we will remove you from the meeting and you will not be allowed to return. So we do not think that that will happen. None of our meetings that happens in, but we just like to provide those ground rules so everyone's prepared for the process if it does. So with that being said, let's start our meeting and with a welcome from the board president, Dennis Brazil.
Thank you, Danielle. Well, welcome everyone to our first community meeting. We look forward to engaging with the public on questions and providing information to you on our district. As you know, the district's been around for many years, and we've reached a crossroad on where we need to make some changes, and that's the reason for the community meeting and the engagement. So again, thank you for being a part of this, and we look forward to engaging with you on the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dennis. Our first presentation will be by Michael Courtney with a history of the district. Michael?
Hello and welcome all. So the district was originally formed in 1957, included the communities of Stevenson, Sentinel, Augustine, and Newman, and originally was primarily a hospital. Go to the next slide. The district history in 1984, a tax measure went before the community to support the ambulance and the hospital. The tax has remained the same as far as dollars since that time. To give you an example of what's gone on in the last few years, 30 plus years, in 1990, fuel is $1.12. Today, I know that most of it feel the pressure of fuel being over $5 a gallon. The population of Newman is half of what it is now. The wages were more than half of what they are now. When the measure was passed, there was only one ambulance. Today we run 2 ambulances 24/7. And why are we different from police and fire? Police and fire are considered an essential service and thus receive tax dollars from property and sales tax. Ambulances in the state of California are not considered an essential service. As of this year, there's 12 states that have recognized EMS, ambulances that is, as an essential service, and South Carolina has currently got a bill up for vote. Where are we now? So the district currently serves a very large area, 475 square miles in the southwest part of Stanislaus and Merced counties. We also cover 16 miles on I-5. We cover the areas of Newman, Gustine, Santanella, Stevenson, and the rural areas surrounding communities. As many of you know, there's a lot of rural areas between all of these. Along with this, we are unique as a district in the fact that we cover communities in more than one county. We cover communities in Merced and in Stanislaus County. We are also the only area in the county that does not have paramedics within the fire departments as a first response prior to an ambulance. This means advanced life support is dependent upon West Side ambulance response. Next slide, please. Currently, we have 2 ambulances, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We employ approximately 25 25 employees. 10 of those are full-time, 13 paramedics, 12 EMTs. We have 4 ambulances and 2 supervisory vehicles. I myself, as far as running the business, I am also on call 24 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and some weekends with assistance and coverage from a part-time assistant chief. We know through data, trial and error, the district needs a minimum of 2 ambulances. Over the last year and a half or so, we tested out a 3rd vehicle and realized that we weren't quite there volume-wise, but we know that we're going to be there shortly. As the community grows, we know we will need another half of an ambulance, which means 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday. Along with the 25 employees, organizationally, the district operates very lean with an administrative services manager, a chief administrative officer, and a part-time assistant chief who fills in when I am not available. I wanted to bring up some specific points of reference here that we looked at when we were trying to figure out a cost-cutting measure because the district was suffering somewhat. So in the month of August, prior to us making some fairly drastic changes within our scheduling policies, our average response time was 6 minutes and 18 seconds. In the month of August, we were down a car 4 shifts, which means we were down a car 7% of the time throughout the month. During that month, you can see what those times were. So we were at 6 minutes and 18 seconds. In the month of September, we took a car down approximately 13 shifts, which was 22% of the time. You can see that it increased our average response time almost by 3 minutes. That's only 22% change, and it took our response time up to 3+ minutes. Our response time, if we don't have an ambulance, this will increase to 20 to 45 minutes for an out-of-area ambulance to respond. The best response time we're going to get is if Patterson and/or Riggs out of Merced is able to respond. If they can't respond, we're looking at at least 35 to 45 minute response time from Modesto. Next slide, please. This slide talked about our compliance. So the lack of coverage in September also decreased the district compliance for response time. We're required to meet our response time by 90% plus. As you can see that the response times in August, we were 95 and 96%. compliant, along with all the 100% compliance. We primarily look at our Zone A urban because that's where we have the most difficulty meeting a response. You can see that in September, when we downed a car 22% at a time, we did not meet our response time compliance, which means the district would be in breach of contract as well as not meeting compliance for that month.
Thank you for that presentation, Michael. Now we'll move on to our budget presentation by Leo Landaverde. Leo?
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? This is the budget presentation. So I'm the acting finance director. Let's go to the next slide. So first and foremost, we wanted to talk to you about our funding sources, current funding sources. What is represented in this pie chart is roughly 63% of our revenue is ambulance revenue. As you can see in the blue is coded gross income, but it is our ambulance revenue. About 30% is tax revenue, and the remainder 7% is miscellaneous or other income. So what goes under other miscellaneous income? So since essentially our sale of assets, insurance premium rebates, but the biggest impact on our other miscellaneous income in the last couple of years has been the COVID-19 relief through the CARES Act by means of funding through about $25,000 from the Department of Health and Human Services in a Paycheck Protection Program funds that we received to help us with payroll. So they came couldn't come at a better time. We have been desperately trying over the last couple of years to aggressively go after other additional income, but we have been unsuccessful. To this end, we have looked into grants, all kinds of grants. Unfortunately, 90% of all available grants right now are for capital expenditures, which means you're buying a building, buying more ambulances, but very few of them actually will give you working capital. But we did apply, managed to apply through one grant through the USDA, Department of Agriculture. And that is after hundreds of hours and several months of working on it. It's still pending. We're still waiting to hear. We don't know whether we're going to hear before the end of the year, but it is uphill battle to get any types of grants. But the revenue, it's only part of the story of our finances. On the next slide, I'm going to discuss how the expenses compare to our income. So what you're looking at right now is our funding sources and our expenses combined. So as it's going to become obvious to you, this data comes from a 9-year period from 2012 to 2021 through the June 30th, 2021 fiscal year end. As you can tell in the orange graph, it is, as you can tell, it is far exceeds our expenses. Our operating expenses far exceed our total revenues, which include the combined ambulance revenue, tax revenue, and miscellaneous. So over a 9-year period, the Westside Community Healthcare District has accumulated a deficit of $900,000 or roughly $100,000 per year. Now, I know it's hard to see on this slide, but there are a few years where the losses far exceeded $300,000. So I know you're probably wondering, how are we able to survive? This seems like the perfect storm, when we have ever increasing operating expenses and flat or decreasing revenues. If we were to average the number figures represented on this chart, which you don't have, to give you an idea, our ambulance revenue over a 9-year period adds up to averages $1,307,000. Our tax revenue is $662,000. Our other miscellaneous revenue is $141,000. However, our total operating expenses are $2,211,682 over a 9-year period. And our total revenue from all sources, it's $2,110,000, which leaves us an average net loss of $100,000 a year. Had it not been for the COVID-19 relief that we received and some other, I don't know if we would be around. Now I know that there's been some information, some confusion about Measure A and what it amounts to and how does it fit into the overall budget. As Chief Corney pointed out, this measure passed in 1984. The dollars that we received are roughly $380,000 per year. So the rest of the tax revenue comes from other taxes and assessment that are not related to Measure A. So can we go to the next slide? So what we really want the most, what we want you to know the most is that we want more than anything, proper stewardship of funds. To this end, we have instituted multiple redundancies through multiple steps and multiple people. For instance, our accounting workflow, and just to give you an example, the chief administrative officers, as well as the administrative services manager, both look at all the incoming vendor bills. They get approved and uploaded into a shared portal where the accounts payable person looks at them, validates all upcoming signatures, uploads them into a portal which 2 board members must look at and approved. Then it goes back to the accounts payable person once fully approved, and they can be ready for payment. By the time a bill is paid, it has been looked at by at least 5 different people. So this is just an example of, at the very basic level, no bill gets approved without multiple people looking at it, and it doesn't get paid without multiple people looking at it. We have complete compartmentalization of labor. Now, a few months ago, probably over 6 months ago, we actually started a financial committee meeting. What is the role of the financial committee meeting? It is to go deeper, take a deeper dive into the financials, which, the financial statements are public knowledge, but we go deeper. We want to see what the variance is against the budget, what's working, what's not working. And it's been an upstream battle because, as I said earlier, there are things beyond our control and expenses that have continued to increase, like just on the cost of living increase on salaries. If you just average 3% year over year, those are significant numbers, but that doesn't stop there. You go on to other expenses like health benefits and the like. So those things need to be discussed at the financial committee meeting to see what we can do about it and how we can stay fiscally responsible. After the financial committee meetings, which happen every month, we have the board oversight meeting, which is our 4th Tuesday of the month, in which the public is welcome. You are welcome to be there and ask questions and look at the financials, because we talk openly about what's going on with the budget, what's going on with our expenses and revenue, anything that the public needs to know. All the board members are there to ask questions, and we all talk about it, make sure that we're moving the district in the right way. So as you can tell, there are checks and balances at every step of the way. Let's go to the next slide. What we want, number one, is transparency. We want you to feel like you have access to everything, that where your money is going, access to the financial statements, asking questions to all the pertinent people. We really want to be working alongside the community, because I want in my role as a finance director for you to look at it, everything, where every penny goes. And we also want engagement. We want your participation in the board meetings. We want you to hear what we have to say and how the steps that we're taking to ensure that we have the appropriate response time. And it's a hard place to be, because there are resources that we have to devote to be able to be fully staffed in every ambulance to be able to provide the kind of response that we need. At the same time, we're trying to save money, which is, is difficult to do. But we want your engagement because we want to do what's best for you. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you for that presentation, Leo. Now we have a presentation from Zaire Marin on the project funding details. Zaire's from NBS.
Thank you, Danielle. So good evening, everyone. Firstly, thanks again for making time to join and participate in tonight's discussion. Some background on who we are. My name is Zaire Marin. I'm a financial analyst with NBS. I'm here with the director of our district financial consulting group, Sarah Maris. Our group specifically specializes in providing revenue solutions to California public agencies through the formation of special financing districts, which are used to fund public services and the construction of public infrastructure. Next slide, please. All right, tonight I'll be providing some context as to the legislative environment in which we operate, and will provide specifics of the proposed parcel tax we'll be discussing tonight. All right, so the backdrop of our story starts with the passing of Proposition 13 in the year 1978. Prop 13 is a voter-approved initiative which limited property assessed value increases to 2% a year. The assessed value of a property is the basis by which a majority of your property tax bill is calculated. Prior to Prop 13, assessed value increases mirrored the market, meaning that if property prices in general increase by 5%, your property's assessed value would increase by 5%, and that would directly impact the amount you paid in property taxes. But again, Prop 13 limited assessed value increases to 2%. And it also placed a 1% rate cap on ad valorem property tax revenues, which is the amount collected and distributed to your local agencies. Prop 13 ensured that property owners will see predictable increases in their annual property tax bill, but it also greatly limited the ability of public agencies to raise funds needed to fund vital public services. And the language of Prop 13 is memorialized in the California Constitution, Section 13A, Article 13A. Next slide, please. All right, fast forward to the year 1996, where we saw the approval of Proposition 218 by the state's electorate. Prop 218 established strict rules on the calculation of special assessments and the establishment of special assessment districts. Prop 218 also established that government-owned property is not exempt from special assessments, and also implemented the protest ballot proceeding. Under this proceeding, a special assessment can be formed only if a majority protest is not received. And the language of Prop 218 is memorialized in the California Constitution, Articles 13C and D. Next slide, please. Fast forward a few more years to the year 2010, where we saw the approval of Proposition 26 by the state's electorate. Prop 26 added the definition of tax to the California Constitution and is defined by exclusion, by which we mean that it is defined as being anything that is neither a fee, a charge, or an assessment, with all three of those things having their own established characteristics. Prop 26 also established that a general tax requires a majority vote, whereas a special tax requires a 2/3 vote. Noting here that the parcel tax we're discussing tonight is a special tax and would require 2/3 approval by registered voters within a Westside Community Healthcare District. And the language of Prop 26 is memorialized in the California Constitution, Articles 13C and D. Next slide, please. What we are presenting to you tonight is a parcel tax, which is referred to more generally as a local special tax measure. In establishing a parcel tax, we must adhere to uniformity requirements. What the uniformity requirement requires is that when establishing the structure of a parcel tax, we must treat all property in the same manner, meaning that generally we cannot tax a residential property differently from a commercial, agricultural, or industrial property. The only exception to that being the ability to set different tax rates for developed versus undeveloped property. A parcel tax, being a special tax, requires a 2/3 approval from the electorate, and we must follow rules detailed in Government Code section 50075. So all that legislative background established, we now shift to the specifics of the parcel tax we're proposing tonight, or the answer to the question of how much are you asking me to pay? Next slide, please. What we're discussing tonight is a flat rate per parcel, whereby every eligible parcel within the district would pay the same amount. We modeled the parcel tax with the goal of reaching an annual revenue goal of $800,000, which equates to a rate per parcel of $92.49. Of course, we want to provide the pros and cons of the structure of the parcel tax. Pro being that it's very straightforward. If you own one parcel, you'll pay about $92. If you own two parcels, you'll pay about $184, and so on, depending on the amount of parcels that you own. Con being that large parcels pay the same amount as small parcels. And under this structure, all parcels, whether developed or undeveloped, pay the same amount. Next slide, please. And on this slide, we show a proposed implementation timeline for the parcel tax. Following this timeline, in late February, the district's board of directors would approve a resolution calling for an election in which registered voters would vote on the proposed parcel tax. That election would be held in June of 2022. And if the parcel tax were approved, the parcel tax would be placed on the tax roll and would appear in the property tax bills that you'll be receiving next year, say around October. And that is my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Zaire, for covering that information. So now we'll move on to how to get engaged. If you haven't been involved much to this point, like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentations, that if you haven't been to civicmic.com/Westside CHD, for those on the phone, please visit the site. There's a lot of useful information there. We're going to look at it quickly here for all of you that are on video. And this is what the web page looks like. When you get to the home page here, there's information about the community meeting, which will be removed after tonight. But as we scroll down, you'll see the survey there. So if you haven't taken the survey, we had, I think we had 54 people that responded to the survey, and there's many, many more community members out there. So if you're talking with your neighbors and you have taken the survey, please encourage others to do so. Share this information on Nextdoor. We'd like to hear from as many of you as possible, because that's the only way the district knows what questions to answer and what materials to share with the community to make sure that everyone's educated and can make the correct decision based on documentation when it comes time for them to make a decision on the parcel tax. So here also you'll see that we have a timeline, and then if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, there's a lot of information on this page. There's a web map there, but if you it'll show the boundaries of the district. It'll show you can click on your parcel to see, the amount that Zaire shared with us, and any of your neighbors. You can scroll in there, but if you continue scrolling to the bottom, this is where you will sign up for updates. Here is where you can subscribe. So anything that we post on the website, there's a section that says latest news. All information that we share is located here. The meeting will be posted here. But if you sign up for updates here, every time we post something, we send out a quick email, and we won't spam you, but we'll send out an email to let you know that there's something out there for you to look at, and it'll give a kind of a highlight of what the content is. So you can look at that and you can share that with your neighbors. So with that being said, I'm going to quickly go over the survey results for those that did take it. So first, we want to make sure that you visit the website, then take the survey if you haven't. For the individuals that did take the survey, we had a overwhelming response from those individuals that they were aware of the ambulance services that were provided by the district. So I know we've spoke with some members of the community that were not aware of what the district does. And I think that this is why we're going through this process. So of course, many of you on the phone or on this call may be aware because you've used services, right? So it's for your neighbors who haven't ever used the ambulance services, and they may make a decision on the parcel tax because based on that fact that they've never used the services. But when it comes time to need those, we want to make sure everyone's educated on what that means when they will need those services and how those services are funded. Next slide. So the next question was, are you aware how the district funds ambulance services? That there's a little less, but still we have 57% of the individuals were aware of how they were funded. And next slide. And then we asked if you were aware that there was a shortage in funding for ambulance services provided by the district. And as you see, as we go through these questions, it's starting to shift about the information that individuals know. So now we're at 57% of the individuals that took the survey did not know that there was a shortage of funding. Next slide. And then finally here, oh, this isn't my final one. We are asking if you believe that the district if it's important to you that the district continues to provide ambulance services in your area, and overwhelmingly the response would strongly agree and agree. You know, we're at 60, 70, 80, almost 80% there of these community members believe that, yes, this is important for the district to continue these services. So then next we ask, on the next slide, we ask if you would support an annual tax to help the district generate sufficient funds to provide these services. And the responses get split here. So I think that we want to answer any questions for anyone, even if you agree or you disagree. But for those that disagree, we want to answer questions you may have as to what funding you think is available to the district or what other options, you know, if you want to know other options they've looked into. As the chief discussed, it's been 37 years since they have come out to the community to ask for additional funding, and you know, they've explored every option possible to this point to get here. Next slide, please. So finally, the last step here to get involved is to join a working group. If you are on this call tonight or know anyone in the community that would like to participate in sharing information with other members of the community or spreading information about where these educational materials can be found, please email me. My email for those on the phone is dwood, so DWOOD at CivicMic, CIVICMIC.com. Thank you, Bianna, for putting that in the chat. Please email me and we will be getting together, having a meeting with all individuals who volunteer to talk about ways that we can share this information with the community. And with that, I think we will move on to the last slide here. We have my contact information a little bit more. If you want to call our 1-800 numbers, 1-800-676-7516. And you can call us if you have any questions that come up after tonight's meeting, something you think of, email or call us. If you have, you know, you want to access to some information, please feel free to give me a call. So now we are through the presentation portion of our night, and we'd like to move on to questions. So I just want to quickly go over the acceptable behavior and interaction guidelines here. We ask that everyone speaks only one person at a time. Don't interrupt others, please. We'd like you to say your name, and then I'll listen for the names and then call on you. We ask that you express your opinion and not speak for others, that you listen carefully and remain open-minded, that you do not make personal attacks, and we'd like to stay on track and avoid grandstanding. So one question per person, and once we get around, if there's no further questions and you have 3, then we can continue to go through your questions, but we'd like to give everyone an opportunity, so only ask 1 question at a time. So with that, as I mentioned before, we'd like to stay at about an hour. So we've got about 20 minutes here. As we start to see people drop off the call, then we'll go ahead and wrap up the questions, because we don't want to be sharing the same information multiple times. And we can then take any other questions and get that information and put it out on CivicMic. So with that, I will open it to questions.
I have a question. I'm on phone only.
Yes, Sherry,
Yes.
go ahead.
Okay. It's kind of a 2-pronged question. Number 1, Measure A. How is that a set amount? I didn't pull out my property tax bill. Is that a set amount, or is it assessed based on value?
Leo, would you like to share that?
The Measure A, yes. Measure A is a fixed amount. And it varies from $40 to $125, I believe, for different.
Okay, so it applies to new development, right? So I don't understand why you're, based on the building that's happened in the last 9 or 10 years, you were saying that you have the set income from Measure A, but it should be going up with new development, correct?
But it is not. The amount of money that we've been receiving from Measure A, Sherry, has been fairly flat for the last few years.
Because of lack of development, or?
I really don't know. That's a good question. Why has, it hasn't increased?
So are you proposing to add this $92 on top of Measure A?
Yes, it would be an additional, it would be an additional measure.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm a lifelong member in this community. My kids are 5th generation on the west side, Newman and Gustine, and I cannot continue to support property owners footing the bill for everybody. The state is currently flush with money. I really would appreciate if you would consider trying to go to our public officials who have been elected by us to work for us, to go to the state and see if they will increase the amount that you get reimbursed for these. Because as a property owner and as somebody who works and has insurance, I'm going to pay for that trip anyway, on top of what I'm going to pay for all of my properties. And we cannot continue to shoulder. Somebody has to think outside the box. I am sorry, but we are maxed out.
Thank you, Sherry, for your questions and comments. We'll get more information in regards to the change in the Measure A revenue as properties have developed, and we'll share that information on CivicMic. As far as going to, to elected officials to look for additional funding sources, I'll talk to some individuals on this call and others to see what information we can get to share with you about that. Community member 1, did you have a question?
Is nobody answering? I'll answer. I'll ask.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I was wondering about when all this expansion of building came into our community, which was in the 1900s, because Newman, for one, was under 3,000 population, and now we're over like 11,000. And I had gone to the city council and I said, put a metal roof on these new properties so they will pay for the increase that they are also bringing into the city. And in Modesto, I had family members that bought property under metal roofs. And I thought, at least that way, maybe then you could get some of that money towards the ambulance. And I don't know how other cities are funding their ambulances. I don't know if everybody does it by taxes. and I've got more to say on this, like we are under an ambulance area. Do our ambulance service other areas outside of our property tax area? And if so, are we being reimbursed in 100% when they go outside of our area? Because
Okay.
I can, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you want us to answer those, I think you have a couple questions there. So we can start first of all by Sarah. Did you want to talk about if there's any Mellore's that are paying for these ambulance services?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a variety of funding mechanisms, and that was one of the reasons we started with the background in our presentation that talked about the legislative history and Proposition 13 and kind of how property taxes work. So if services cannot be funded through the regular share of ad valorem or value-based property taxes that the district or another public agency receives, then they have three options in California to raise additional funds. One is an assessment, one is a tax, and the other is a fee. So those are the three options. A Mello-Roos is considered a special tax, just like a parcel tax, which is what we're talking about here tonight, is also considered a special tax. They're two different forms of special taxes. So there are other communities that use community facilities districts or Mello-Roos districts to fund their ambulances. I would say I actually see parcel taxes used more widely to fund ambulance services than I do community facilities districts. But certainly both options are part of the mix.
Thank you. And then do we want to talk about Chief Courtney, would you like to answer the question in regards to providing ambulance services outside the area and how you're reimbursed for that?
Yeah, so, I probably should have mentioned that earlier that, every city and every region of the county has a responsibility to be part of a mutual aid agreement. So you would hope that the mutual aid is mutual in that, if I provide 5 calls to Patterson, they provide 5 calls to me. Same thing with Merced and those other areas. I would tell you that that's probably pretty true for Patterson and Merced. It's probably not so much true for Modesto, but they just instituted some new measures that we believe will help even that out. As far as the reimbursement, if we go on the call, we're able to bill for the call. It doesn't mean that it's going to be a 1-for-1, but it's in our view, it's a fair return.
Thank you for that. We have some questions that were sent through chat here, so I'll go ahead and ask a few of those and go back to individuals that want to speak. So we're asked here, speaking of response times, can you elaborate on the contractual requirements? I think maybe that's what you just covered, MVEMSA, including the First Responders Incorporation. Can you provide a document or data about the 30-minute response time from other ambulance companies? Chief Courtney, is that something that you'd want to talk about, what we can provide on that? Or if there's anything else to say about the contractual requirements of MVEMSA?
Are we referring to Mountain Valley EMS? Is that correct?
I don't know who put the chat here. Whoever put the chat in here, is that what you're referring to with MVEMSA?
It's community
Yes.
member 1.
Looks like that's correct. That's what they're referring to.
Yeah, so each agency within the county that operates an ambulance has to sign a contract with Mountain Valley EMSA. We all have to abide by the same rules. Our response times are the same for each area. Some areas get a different, what's the word I'm looking for? For instance, in Patterson, their response time requirements is slightly different than ours. And the only reason that is because they have an ALS fire component. So their response time can be a little more than ours can because we only have a BLS response. I'm not sure if that answers their question or not.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from individuals on the phone or on video chat?
I have one. My name's Keith.
Yes, Keith, go ahead.
Can someone describe what the added benefit is to the community of Newman, who pays a benefit tax to Westside Community Ambulance over communities like Riverbank, Ceres, Turlock, Modesto, Salida, Denair, Houston, Keys, Livingston, Delhi, Hillmar, Atwater, Merced, Los Banos, Dos Palos, Palico, Planada, who don't pay a benefit tax?
I don't know who would like to answer that. Either Sarah or Chief Courtney, if either of you would like to answer that, if either of you have anything to say about that. Comparing other communities that may not, I don't know. I can't tell you if they pay some other form of tax that funds ambulance services in that list.
So I'll answer the best I can. I am not familiar with every single community. What I will say is that every single agency within the county of Stanislaus has to sign within, if they're going to provide ambulance service, they have to sign a contract. Within that contract, they also have to provide mutual aid to their neighboring communities. Now, each one of those may be slightly different depending on where they're at. One of the unique things about us is we service both Stanislaus and Merced counties, along with the extreme rural nature of our area. Now, I'm not sure if I've answered his question, but many of those areas have BLS fire, some of them have ALS fire, but all of them have some sort of ambulance service. Some of them have a taxing district similar to ours. Modesto proper has a private ambulance.
Thank you, Chief. Sarah, did you want to talk about the parcel tax increase over the last 8 years? Just going back to that.
Thank you. I just wanted to address what we've seen in terms of increase to parcel tax. And so just to remind everyone what the rates are for the Measure A parcel tax, that has residential property at $40 per unit. Agricultural property pays $40 per residential unit plus 10 cents per acre. Commercial property pays $95 per parcel. Industrial property pays $250 per parcel. So in this case, the property, the Measure A does not have an inflator built in. So the same rates that were adopted in many years ago, I believe 1984, right, are the rates that are being charged today. What we've seen in terms of growth, and I went back to 2013 real quickly here. We have seen an increase overall in revenue in Measure A of about $12,000 from the period of 2013 to today, the 21-22 fiscal year levy. So in total, the increase is roughly $12,000 over that time period. And that accounts for all of the new development and so forth that has occurred during that time.
Thank you for that, Sarah.
I have another question.
Yes, go ahead, Sherry.
So is there some reason why you did not consider doing like what Measure A is, where you would, I mean, if I have a house that's worth $300,000 and somebody has a business that's worth $3 million, I don't think we should be paying the same amount. And isn't it true that your shortfall is not necessarily because of the, I get you're saying it only went up 12,000, which is kind of mind-boggling to even get. I know there's been more growth than that, but isn't it the fact that the expenses of making that trip, taking that person to the hospital costs $5,000 or $6,000, and the government's only reimbursing you $1,500, and that's what hasn't gone up. And you're asking the property taxes, the property owners, when actually the government needs to increase what it reimburses you.
Chief Courtney, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with Sherry on the reimbursement portion. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons that you see small rural ambulances all over the country going out of business and struggling, is because the reimbursements have not gone up with the signs of the times. I can tell you, I think in a few years we might see some change. I don't see it happening overnight, but there is some good movement within the state of California as well as across the country for CMS, which is Medicare and Medicaid, to look at the rates. And in fact, Westside is part of the pilot program to do a reporting out on what an actual cost of an ambulance ride is. So that's part one to your question. I think, part two to your question is, as I said earlier, because we're not considered an essential service, had we been considered an essential service from the very beginning, that our tax, the taxes that we received would have been going up along with property values over the last several years. But because we're on a flat tax rate that hasn't changed since the day it was imposed, we receive almost the same money we received 37 years ago. The only reason we have any type of increase is because of growth. And I can tell you that, within the district, yes, Newman has grown. Justine has not grown very much. There just isn't a huge increase as as with property taxes. When you think about what a house was worth in 1984 versus 2021, I'm sure you can do the math. There's a lot of change there, and that's why police and fire are doing all right, as well as the cities. But as far as an ambulance goes, we just haven't had the growth that we need.
Thank you. Sarah, was there a tax on undeveloped property is there for Measure A?
I'm just going to go back and double check again to make sure, but I do not believe so.
Can I add something to
just
that?
Agricultural property has the 10 cents per acre.
Okay, thank you.
And again, was there a reason why you didn't do it based on assessed value or make it different tiers this time?
You can't have a parcel tax based on assessed value. The only type of tax that is allowed to be levied based on the value of property is the general ad valorem property tax.
And I think, Sherry, I can. Sorry.
Is it possible that some people will, given this $92 increase in property tax, that some people would actually be over the 1% that Prop 13 says you can't go over?
No, so the ad valorem, your general property tax, is what's limited to 1%. Public agencies can use these other types of mechanisms, such as the parcel tax or community facilities district or what have you, and that amount can go over the 1%.
Thank you, Sarah. We have a question here in regards to, they're asking if you can explain in detail the bill for service model and GEMT funding. So either Chief Courtney or Leo, can either of you explain that?
I can speak to that.
Okay.
There was a period of time up to 2015 when there was some type of reimbursement for GEMT expenditures, but that stopped in 2015, and we have not received any since then. And what we've been hearing is that, oh yeah, we're gonna reinstitute it. Meanwhile, we're being charged per transport to go to the GEMT fund that we have not been able to use for 6 years. So
Thank
it is unfortunate, but it is what it is. We have not received it.
Thank you, Leo. We're coming up on 8 o'clock, so I'll go ahead and take 2 more questions and then we'll wrap up for the evening. Do we have another question? Okay, well, maybe we won't take any more questions. So we're right at 8 o'clock. We really appreciate all of you joining us
What
tonight.
about the COVID funds that the government gave out to all these cities?
Yes,
And it was
Leo.
passed out to Newman.
Yes, Leo can speak. I think he spoke about that a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry, it's 7. Spoke about that a little bit earlier, but Leo, can you go over that as well one more time?
Yeah. So for all the money that was supposed to be coming through ambulance services from COVID-19 and the CARES Act, since the beginning of the pandemic, we received roughly about between $26,000 and $30,000 from the Department of Health and Human Services, and we were able to qualify for a PPP, with a Paycheck Protection Plan, for a forgivable loan for $250,000. That's really what helped us. But that was it. We have not received anything after that.
What does it cost a person that lives in the district to be transported? You know, what do they owe, besides the insurance, what do they owe the West Side ambulance if you need it? This is not counting the taxes you pay.
Yes, is that something, Leo, you can answer?
Well, it really depends on the category of reimbursement. So there is, we have the commercial insurance that is on the and the commercial plan of each of the commercial payers. We have Medicare, we have Medicaid, and we have some private pay. So it really depends on the person's situation. We want to avoid at all costs somebody having to pay personally if they have Medicaid, Medicare, or commercial insurance. And that would be whatever each person has agreed upon with their, with their commercial insurance, whatever agreement those are, because those are set, we're not privy to that. We just know that if we ask for somebody to have insurance, if they have insurance, and then we will use it because we don't want to use, personal pay.
Thank you.
Huh. I think I've been billed for personal pay on top of the insurance. I'm going to have to look more into that.
Yes, please feel free to look into that and then reach out to me and I can work with the district or reach out to the district directly to discuss that on an individual basis.
This is Dennis.
Yes, Dennis.
I got a couple of remarks I can put in here as we close.
Okay.
So that everybody understands, the district wouldn't be in the position of a financial shortfall if Measure A, when it was put together, would have had a escalator built into it to keep up with the cost of inflation, just like the whole United States does on an annual basis. But because it didn't, this is what has put the district in an odd position of having a shortfall depending on the money coming in. So that everybody understands on our collections how things work, we collect about 20 to 23 cents on the dollar. So if you do the math, it doesn't take very long to figure out that the ambulance business in general is not a money-making business. Most of our calls are Medi-Cal or Medicare, so they pay a very, very small portion of the actual cost of the transport. And all of those shortfalls have caused the district to have shortfalls. 2 years ago, the district was in a position that it was possibly going to close. It had went through 2 management systems trying to oversee the district. That was about the time that I ran to get on the board. And we agreed as a board and as a district with both counties in full support that we would turn the district 180 degrees and become more financial responsible and really leave no stone unturned for everything that we needed to do to run this as a business moving forward. And a little over 2 years later, we have done that 100%. And what we found is that we are headed for a shortfall, which means that an ambulance company that you see on the outside that appears to be operating with no issues in the next year or a year and a half could run into some serious financial problems that could cause it to close. This is the reason we are looking for Measure B. Item number 2 that one of the callers had talked about was going to our elected officials. We have went to all of our elected officials. They are all aware of the issues that rural ambulance companies in the state of California are struggling with. There's legislation that's being looked at to try to help correct this, but it is not anywhere in the near future. And nor have they really got an idea of how they want to put that together. But we have went to state and federal in support of trying to do something for the rural ambulance companies that are in dire need. Rural ambulance companies across the nation are closing one after another. They cannot keep the doors open because of the way the payment comes in. So I think that if you step back and look at this, one of the callers asked, what is the community getting for this? What you're getting for this is a life-saving measure that's in your backyard. Because if the ambulance service was not being conducted by the special district, and your response time goes from 7 minutes and say 30 seconds up to 25 minutes or higher waiting for an ambulance, we have left the life-saving measure of the response on the call to now we're transporting a critical patient. That's the difference. So right now our fixed rate is $40 a year. That's $3.33 a month. Most people spend $7 or $6 on a cup of coffee from Starbucks. So start thinking about this in a sensible, logical way. Even adding the $92, that's a little over $7 a month. Add the two together, it's $11. $11 to have an ambulance at your disposal in less than 10-minute response time is probably the cheapest insurance I've ever seen. So it's critical for us to keep this ambulance district here, because if not, what we're gonna lose, not just for the Newman community, but for the whole district, is that quick response time and the life-saving measures. So hope everybody understands, and we're gonna have another meeting coming up and we'll have more information for you. Thank you. Thank you, Danielle.
Yes, thank you for those closing thoughts. I know there are some more people that have questions about mutual aid. Please feel free to email them to me. I will work with the district to get some information that we can post out on CivicMic.com about the mutual aid and what that looks like. And we can answer any additional questions that weren't answered tonight and share those with the community so they're documented online. So we appreciate you all joining us tonight, and we hope to hear from many of you. Like I said, please reach out to your neighbors. Excuse me, reach out to your neighbors and ask them to get involved and to visit CivicMic.com so they can find out about Measure B. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.